Friends, it's great to see you all. It is great to see you all. There's Nancy Tate from Lapoco, one of the longest standing peace groups in the country. H.A. Penner, Mennonite extraordinaire. Friends from Catholic Peace Fellowship. And I'm Bob. I'm with the Brandywine Peace Community. Back in 2013, somehow a friend sent to me something about a news conference that was going to take place up here, involving representatives of the U.S. Air Force, of the Air National Guard, the representatives from the area, to talk about a new wing to the Air Guard. And the new wing was the Drone Command. It's not a wing like this. It's a scene like that. And they insisted consistently, oh, this is purely for foreign purposes. Questions like, well, what about surveillance in this country? Oh, no. And they said it would be open, it would actually go online. That is, persons hired as drone commanders or drone operators. And of course, it could be anywhere in any of these buildings. There was a time where some of us were old enough to remember to remember Willow Grove, that air station. Many of us were arrested going onto the property during the deployments, Air Guard and National Guard deployments to El Salvador. And so I was puzzled. I went to it. And I had 4 questions that I wrote out. None of them were even responded to. But anyway, they said that it would be up and running within 6 months. And the correct term for it is a remote drone command center. Remote drone command center. There's nothing in there about killing, is there? A remote drone command center. It actually took them 2 years. And in 2015, actually in 2013, we started a campaign saying, stop it before it starts. Unlike some of the other drone command centers and drone operations around the country, we knew it was coming. We knew that we could stop it. And so we started the usual trek through Congress people, well, without casting any aspersions right now, God forbid. Oh, no. Well, no. Well, what about hearings? So we really tried to push them on hearings. Not a single hearing. Not a single hearing. I do not exaggerate. Not one single hearing. Here in Horsham Township, in Montgomery County, in the state, not one. And you know who is legally responsible for the Air Guard and therefore its operations, and that's the governor. So we also paid some visits to the governor. In fact, it must have been the guy before Wolf, who, little should be said. but not a single hearing. Not one single hearing. Militarism kills democracy. Simple fact is militarism kills democracy. It stifles the voice, it flattens the voice, it kills the voice of democracy. So we kept doing that for 2 years, and we started demonstrations here as well. And of course, at first, there was hundreds of people out here, consecutive Saturdays. And then, of course, as it became more and more routine, so to speak, people stopped coming. And then finally we got word. I don't even remember how we got it. It wasn't announced. This had been when it was announced that of the intention to have a drone command center here. It was a lot of media, a lot. When it went online, nothing. We were out here, and we were told by a couple of legislators, person from head of the township, chairperson of the township, it's a done deal, you know it's going. And I said, no, it's not a done deal. We resist then, okay? We resist. There's nothing that's a done deal. And we kill something in ourselves when we accept that. When we say, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. That means our citizenship in a democracy is dead. It's done. It's a done deal. So that's where we've been over these past 13 years. For most of us, and of course, their biggest concern here in terms of policing is our reputation that has to do with Lockheed Martin over in King of Prussia, where there have been thousands of arrests since the latter 70s, early 80s. Many people here will remember the Plowshares 8, the first Plowshares action. I love the memory of each and every one of them. But that continues as well. But we have no pretension that we can do anything but with Lockheed Martin but resist. But resist, and we've held to that. Dr. King said, when you have a conscience, you know the difference between right and wrong. When you know the difference between right and wrong. And as a religious group, we remember Dr. King saying, you know, you don't go to church. You don't go to church. You come from a church. You come from a church for the sake of justice. You come from a church for the sake of peace. You don't just go to church and leave it at that. We're not leaving this place alone any more than we've left Lockheed Martin alone. It is the very definition of who we are. That is peacemakers. That is nonviolent resistors, war resistors. It's the very definition of who we are. And on that note, a peacemaker.
My name is Jack Gilroy, and I'm with the Upstate Drone Action and also band Killer Drones. Just wanted to say that I really appreciate being with all of you folks from Lancaster, Brandywine community. It's been almost 40 years, I think, since I took students down to, I was a high school teacher, took students down on a Saturday to Lockheed Martin at King of Prussia. And over the years, I got to know two individuals who you were ready to mention among the many good people there, Dan Berrigan and Phil Berrigan. And it was interesting that when I was leaving Petersburg, arriving actually at Petersburg prison back in 2001 for simply attempting to deliver petitions to close the School of the Americas, I was only there a day or so when the word got around at Petersburg that I was a political prisoner. And a fellow came up out in the yard and told me that I just missed Phil Berrigan. They had moved him from Petersburg out to Ohio because it was the government decided he was too close to his family here, right? His family from Baltimore could come down to Petersburg without too much trouble, so they moved him out. But these were some great individuals, and I thank you for keeping up the memory of the Brandywine people, and a young dude now like Brad taking the baton and carrying it through with the Lancaster peace community. We've had about 150 arrests up at the 174th Attack Wing. Notice they call themselves the Attack Wing. And they're very secret, like Bob was saying, the secrecy surrounding Horsham. They don't really tell an awful lot, but there were a few years back when they mistakenly told a reporter, kind of bragged about their actions in Afghanistan. So that's probably just one of the hit places that the 174th Attack Wing of the New York State National Guard, but of course it's the United States Air Force, the Pentagon, the CIA, it's all involved in it. So that's all I have to say, is just I really wish you well, and it's great to see so many cars, a great spot here for them to stop and take a look at the signs like, can you see they're murdering me? And that, of course, is the theme that Brad and others have established for today. So we can't see an awful lot of that. We have seen it, for example, when all those reporters were stuck in Kabul from around the world on August 29th, 2021, when there was an attack that killed a family of 10, right? They said afterwards it was a mistake, it was collateral action. But back in the hinterland, the New York Times reporter, Azmith Khan, who spoke the language, visited for many, many months throughout the hillsides and wrote, and you can check this out in the January 2nd, 2021 edition of the New York Times, 22 edition of the New York Times, that there were thousands of people that were killed. And so some people might think that it was only in Kabul that mistake was made. Not so.
Somewhere along the line, this Catholic became a Quaker. And I have discovered something about the power of silence. So I'd ask that as the bell tolls, we take a moment of silence to remember all those who have resisted, many of whom have passed. Ordinarily, my dear friend Tom Mullion would be singing a song right now. He called me last night and said that he had COVID. And I said, does that mean you'll be late? And he said, no, Bob. First time he hasn't been here. First time. So I'd ask that we stand in silence for a few minutes in memory of peacemakers and resistors. The words of Dan Berrigan, who said, what we have to offer others is hope. So let us allow that hope to come up through us and to be offered to others. I was wondering if I had any relevant lawyer jokes. I don't. But I think of the lawyers down at who represented us in so many arrests down at the Pentagon. Norm Townsend, who was a lawyer advisor, along with Ramsey Clark, to the Plowshares 8 when they were tried over in Norristown. I almost said the young lawyer Norm Townsend, who recently passed, but I was too younger. You know, I think somebody earlier asked me something about how Brandywine got started. And we got started over in Media, Pennsylvania, in the waning days of the Vietnam War, the last days. And we had experienced the FBI's reaction to the so-called break-in of the FBI office. Hello. And we came out of that with the realization that Vietnam was not an exception. That in fact Vietnam was simply a part of the U.S. empire of war. And so we got started in a little house, actually it wasn't so little, outside of Media on Barron Road. And initially it was 2 Vietnam veterans and 4 Vietnam era war resistors like myself who had done time for non-compliance with the draft. And we knew that Brandywine wasn't going to be just another social action or political group. We knew that Brandywine was about risk, was about civil disobedience, and was embracing that. But to be blunt, I never thought we'd be approaching our 48th birthday. I never thought that. But in part, we continued on with the help of some really good lawyers. I should say some really great lawyers. And I think, of course, of Ramsey Clark, who ironically signed my indictment for refusal to cooperate with selective service when I reminded him of that during the Plowshares 8 trial, non-defensively, which is great. Non-defensively, he said, "Well, you don't seem any worse the wear for it." And I wasn't. So, but the lawyer I have introduced, I've been hearing a lot about work up in Lancaster, the Lancaster Network, Peace Action Network, that has this great poster over here that says, "Peace is a verb. And peace is a lie if it's not a verb. Peace is a lie if it's not a verb." Brad Wolf.
Thank you, everybody. As Bob alluded to, I am an attorney. I'm a former prosecutor, but I found my way from prosecution to peace. And this is the way to go, to join with people like all of you today at events like this, to shine a light on operations like drone warfare. The drones that are controlled from this base and that they rain down death on villages all across the globe, they do not manufacture themselves. They are built by United States corporations, weapons manufacturers that have reaped trillions, literally trillions of dollars over the last 20 years in the wars on terror. It's time we hold those weapons manufacturers accountable.
Here, here.
We have established the Merchants of Death War Crimes Tribunal, and we are going to indict 4 of those weapons manufacturers. We're going to indict Raytheon, General Atomics, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin. And on this November 10th, we are going to deliver subpoenas to each one of their corporate offices, demanding that they turn over documents to our tribunal that reveal how much money they have made from delivering death to countries around the globe, how much money they have spent on lobbying to get those contracts for weapons approved. We want to know all the documentation about the unlawful killing of civilians in those countries. They're going to have 60 days to turn those documents over. We are currently interviewing experts, military experts, victims of war, legal analysts, who can hold these people accountable in our tribunal. We are charging them with aiding and abetting the United States government in the commission of war crimes. We are also charging them with bribery and theft. We're going to present this evidence next November 11th, 2023 at a tribunal that will be broadcast across the globe. We've got a number of people who are contributing, from Noam Chomsky to Medea Benjamin, to John Pilger, to Marjorie Cohen, to Bill Quigley, to Ann Wright. They are all working toward the same effort, and that is to shine a light on these weapons manufacturers, hold them accountable for their crimes. War profiteering is a crime. Making money off of death is a crime. These are our dollars, and it's time we say, not in our name and not with our dollars anymore. This has to end. We're going to try to bring it to an end. Thank you.
Right on, Brad. Great. Great.
Just to accent what Brad just said, you know, I was really curious. A couple nights ago, I did the Google search, 2 in the morning. I didn't know what else to do, so I went to Google and I asked, who owns Lockheed Martin? And I was expecting to see a little something about shareholders. 4 corporations or financial institutions came up. The first one and largest was the Vanguard Group. The Vanguard Group, which is headquarters 3 miles from the King of Prussia site of Lockheed Martin. We got to go after Vanguard. We have to go after Vanguard. It's incredible. Vanguard Group manages $9 trillion worth of savings. Probably many people here have their retirement fund in Vanguard. I don't have a retirement, so but this year will not come to pass without us being at Vanguard. Without us being at Vanguard. Without us taking a subpoena to Vanguard. We've been to demonstrations of its annual meeting in Philadelphia, but we've yet to go to that very, very shiny entrance there in Malvern. Vanguard. Vanguard. It's Vanguard. There's Lockheed Martin. All of which has a summation in drone warfare, drone crimes, in drone killing. If we cannot get over our habitual lifestyle of killing, we are most surely dead. I'd just like to end with something, and it has to do with what that banner there says. The banner that's addressed to drone operators, who are not our enemy. They are not. And increasingly with Brad and other people here, we're saying these children that have been killed, these children who have died at the hands of the Hellfire missiles produced by Lockheed Martin and fired from and navigated from places like this, affect and target you too. There is a thing called moral damage. It's become a psychiatric fact. Every killing is a mirror into our souls, and that these drone operators pay for first and foremost. I think Death wants to say something.
Oops, for a moment to remind people that Earthquaker Action Team has as its current focus a campaign against Vanguard. They are very active in that regard, and it is good for us to combine our energies with those that have a great deal of experience with making Vanguard very uncomfortable. They are an evil empire, as Bob says.
Just by way of a few announcements, this past week or so, we were part of a thing called Defuse Nuclear War. In October of 1962, I was 12 years old as a student of Holy Cross School in Delaware County. And during the Cuban Missile Crisis that was taking place then, the nun was always very insistent that we had a Catholic president who wouldn't allow the communists to go any further. And she demonstrated what that meant, what the Monroe Doctrine meant, that you are not to come into this hemisphere. The U.S. policy of Monroe Doctrine, by holding up a cross like this and saying, you communists, you die, you don't come in here. Remember that very well. Why is it a 12-year-old can remember that? But we lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. Right now, many people, like Noam Chomsky, are saying that we are in a Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse. For the first time, nuclear weapons are being threatened, honestly, consistently threatened, but we don't see any of it in terms of alarm in this country. The existence of nuclear weapons. We don't see any of that. So, along with Roots Action, we've been going to places. This past Sunday, we went to ABC News on City Line Avenue to say, you need to start saying something about this. You need to start covering anti-nuclear weapons demonstration, which is what Brandywine Peace Community was, wherein we were born. If we are reduced to rubble, it will be because of our society's silence. Silence. And so we're going to continue that. We're going to be on a couple bridges in the coming weeks. We're going to go through some, well, what is Mount Airy like? Fruit and vegetable sales, to say, many of us shared in the 1980s a commitment, an anti-nuclear commitment. It was not just anti-nuclear power, but was most importantly anti-nuclear weapons. We need to come out again. Because in a sense, it's our generation's unfinished business. It's our generation's unfinished business. We should not be having, in the middle of a war, open threats and tolerance through nuclear weapons. That should not be happening, because nuclear weapons, quite simply, have no goddamn reason to exist. None. Zilch. That day is over. Let's get on with our generation's responsibility. Anyone else who would like to share something? H.A.
As always, it's great to be here. I enjoy very much the camaraderie and the fellowship that this event provides. Unfortunately, we have to do this kind of thing in order to witness to what's going on in the world. And part of what's going on in the world is elaborated in this sign. And I'm just here to tell you that we have a number of these signs available, and if anyone would like to have a supply of them, they're available. So see me afterwards. Thank you so much.
Friends, this demonstration, as well as a few other demonstrations at other drone command sites, is connected with the Shutdown Creech encampment that's going on, that's actually reaching its conclusion today. So we thought this would be a good day to be here again. And all of that is within the context, and if you will, sheltered in the Ban Killer Drones network, of which Brad is very much a key figure. It was organized by Kathy Kelly and Nick Modern. And would very much urge people to go on to their website, www.bankillerdrones.org. bankillerdrones.org. Very much. But if you go on it right now, you will see a statement that was co-authored by Brad about an appeal right now that's being made to the Secretary General of the United Nations.
This is a letter from Kathy Kelly and Nick Modern, who are the co-coordinators of bankillerdrones.org. Dear Secretary General of the United Nations Guterres, with the widespread press coverage of Russian attacks by weaponized drones against Ukrainian cities, the world is now seeing the suffering and terror that has been experienced by thousands of people across the Middle East, East Asia, and Africa since the United States began using these weapons on the first day of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. We beg you, Secretary General Guterres, to seize this moment of public clarity, to demand a total halt to the weaponized drones in the Ukraine war and globally, where killer drones are being used by a number of nations to hunt and kill, notably of late in Gaza, Ethiopia, Somalia, Syria, and Kurdish regions. This is the moment to stop the spreading scourge of slaughter and terror by weaponized drones. Killer drones are a particularly inhumane type of warfare, with high error rates causing the deaths of civilians. Moreover, killer drones seek to desensitize us from war, make war seem, quote, easier, and thereby increase the chances of yet more wars. This is something we must never allow to happen. As you know, drone warfare is not bringing peace, but extending war. For example, in Ethiopia, where drones provided to the Ethiopian central government are extending and expanding attacks across the Tigray people. We are sure that you have seen this comment by Stephen Ratner, a member of the UN Commission on Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia, when the Commission released its report in September of this year. Quote, the Ethiopian military's increasing use of drones to conduct airstrikes over the last year has changed the conflict landscape. In theory, drones should allow for more precise targeting of military objectives. However, our investigation indicates that their use has exposed civilians to new and heightened risks. Our findings are especially concerning, given reports of airstrikes in Tigray since August, which have killed and injured civilians, including children, end quotes. Now, while the conscience of the world is alerted, is the time to call for an international ban on weaponized drones and an immediate halt in their use. As you may be aware, Ban Killer Drones has been conducting a postcard campaign for the last year, urging you to work for an international treaty to ban weaponized drones. Thank you for considering this. Please sign Kathy Kelly and Nick Modern, co-coordinators of bankillerdrones.org. Thank you.
In 1967, I made a decision that I'd be different. I was living in Clifton Heights, where I was born and raised. For those who are not familiar with that section of Upper Darby, it's very much very ethnic. Every street has a different ethnicity. But there was one consistent through it all, and that is the view of black people. So I made a decision to go into Chester. There's only 18 miles between Clifton Heights and Chester, Pennsylvania, but it was the longest journey I ever made. And there I got connected with people at the Quaker study group Pendle Hill, and also a place called the Crozier Theological Seminary, which would become Crozier Hospital. And one day, some people at the Crozier Theological Seminaries, probably heard of some of them, George Lakey and the Willoughbys, they were having a service over at a Baptist church, Calvary Baptist Church nearby, and it was the first sermon to be given by a very young Martin Luther King Jr. And I sat there, and as I heard the words that seemed so much more alive than any religious words I had ever heard, I knew that we would be different. We would be different. Before that, Dr. King delivered in part these words as the acceptance speech to his Nobel Peace Prize. And I'd ask that you read along the passages so noted. December 10th, 1964. I refuse to accept the idea that the isness of humanity's present nature makes us morally incapable of reaching up for the eternal oughtness that forever confronts us all. I refuse to accept the idea that humanity is mere flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, unable to influence the unfolding events which surround us. I refuse to accept the view that humanity is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and reconciliation can never become a reality. I refuse to accept the cynical notion that nation after nation must spiral down a militaristic stairway into the hell of thermonuclear destruction. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. I believe that even amid today's mortar bursts and whining bullets, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. I believe that wounded justice, lying prostrate on the blood-flowing streets of our nation, can be lifted from this dust of shame to reign supreme among the children of humanity. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered people have torn down, other-centered people can build up. And I still believe that one day humanity will bow before the altars of God and be crowned triumphant over war and bloodshed. And nonviolent redemptive good will proclaim the rule of the land. And I still believe that we shall overcome. Amen all, amen all dear ones. Thank you so very much for being here and for us being friends and community. Amen.